Hi, I'm Harper, and welcome to Harper Carroll AI. If you don't know me, I'm an AI engineer, advisor, and now educator with about 10 years of experience engineering AI at Stanford, Meta, and then as founding engineer and then head of AI at a startup acquired by NVIDIA. Our goal here at HCAI is to help everyone understand AI and use it to their benefit. I am thrilled to announce today's guest, Andy Lin, a developer turned CEO whose journey with technology began at just 10 years old and has evolved through nearly 3 decades of management and technology consulting. Andy's career is a fascinating progression from a young self starter to business leader with 2 successful exits under his belt. Two. And what makes our conversation truly special is Andy's unique perspective on the current AI revolution. Having witnessed multiple technology iterations throughout his career, Andy brings a confident, thoughtful assessment that this particular moment with AI represents something truly transformative. As the CEO of KNOVVA, an agentic AI platform, Andy is pursuing a mission that combines business and technology with his true passion: personal development and helping others in their own personal development. His company is creating digital workers that handle mundane tasks, freeing humans to focus on intellectually challenging problems and innovation. Our discussion today offers valuable insights for everyone, whether you're excited about AI's potential or concerned about its implications. Andy's thoughtful approach to embracing this technology while keeping human growth at the center makes for a truly thought-provoking conversation. So, let's dive in with Andy Lin, a leader who's not just incredibly knowledgeable and articulate, but also bringing a refreshingly kind and human-centered approach to the AI revolution. Thanks for being here, Andy. Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you, Harper. Thank you for having me.
So, I just want to start off learning a little bit about your background so we
Yeah,
can tell everyone. So, yeah,
absolutely.
share, please.
So my name is Andy Lin. I'm currently CEO of Provoke Solutions. Um, I started my career actually when I was 10 years old. I fell in love with programming. Like my parents didn't even have a computer. I went to a friend's house and there was a Commodore 64. I think you're
I don't
probably,
even
it was way
know.
beyond what you had ever played with. But I fell in love with it. So I started coding ever since I was 10. And fortunate enough that at this point in my career, I get to stay pretty close to what I found as a childhood love. So feel blessed and really appreciate every moment, every client, every technologist that I've interacted with over my entire life and career.
Yeah.
It's been really, really wonderful.
So tell me about your journey to Provoke. So you
Yeah,
started as a coder. How did you
yeah.
get to Provoke?
So funny enough, and it's one of those stories that when I say it, well, some people don't believe it, but it's absolutely true. So I started programming when I was a kid, got into programming competitions, and this was before formal training. So this is just one of those like I just had a knack for it.
Mm.
And that's not to say those are the only people that can go into coding. I just happen to be blessed to understand software development from a young age pretty intuitively. Went to college, and for those in your audience that were kind of raised Asian American, your parents had 2 career choices for you. You're going to be a physician or a physician, and neither of those were interesting to me. But in college, this is when I was going to college. The internet had just come out, and so I went to Cal Berkeley. I know you went to Stanford, but so all the mom and pop shops, they just wanted a internet site, just a simple web page, and so it's the first time I started making money off of that. I just charge $50 and we get a web page up for them and
Cool.
all that stuff. And they didn't even have their domain names; it's kind of like the shared hosting stuff. But it was really the first time that I really fell in love. Like, hey, I could do this professionally. And so didn't really pay much attention because I really wanted to make my parents happy. But walked with a friend to a job fair, and
Mhm.
there's this big sign for Anderson Consulting there that are known as Accenture now.
Yeah.
And so I was just watching my friend get interviewed, but somebody came up and talked to me, and he's like, "You should really, consider us. Like, don't just look at Genentech."
Yeah.
So I went ahead and said sure, took the interview, got hired, spent the next 4 years there, and then really, really honed my skills as a consultant, but also really, deepen my technical skills.
So you were doing that, you were doing technical skills while you were a consultant.
That's correct. So I would be hired onto projects. Like my first client was Pacific Bell, actually, up in the Bay Area. They no longer exist anymore, but doing like the low level stuff, testing, which we'll get into a little bit later. And then I moved to a smaller boutique consultancy up in the Bay Area, stayed 16 years there, really learned everything about the consulting business, held every single role that you could hold, everywhere from still doing technical work to relationship management, then the sales, and then, eventually running a region. And then I kind of caught the bug. It was like 16 years at the same company. Lots of my friends came out of college, joined Yahoo, joined Cisco. Didn't know where they were. They had just retired, at that point. And so I kind of got this little bug of like, can I do something entrepreneurial within consulting? And I joined a company called Aperio. And so Aperio was a Salesforce.com pure play. So they did nothing but cloud implementations. And they were kind of the last one standing, all of the big firms that acquired all of the Aperio's competitors. And I was bought in to kind of help bring a custom application development angle to, Salesforce, which is traditionally a lot more config, and, you don't get a different UI. All the rules are kind of set. Every customer more or less has the same implementation. But as differentiation and branding became more and more important, more and more customers are saying, well, I kind of really like to tweak it so it looks more like my brand. I want the UI to be a little bit different. I want some custom integrations. And so that's where I came in and helped them launch that line of business, and also bring in digital agency capabilities. So really bring creatives and UX and that kind of discipline to.
So you're fully at this other company now. You've
Yes.
left your consulting
I've left
role.
my other company. I've came and joined Aperio.
Yeah.
And then 2.5 years later, they got acquired, and I got a little deposit in my bank account. Wasn't life-changing, but I was like, whoa, never seen that much money in my account.
Yeah.
But cool.
Yeah.
So after that, I knew I was done with kind of the bigger firms. So when the bigger firm came in and acquired Aperio, I went to yet another firm, and this was a company called Nexient. And this is probably the most transformational part of my career. So I went in. This was a pure engineering group.
What is at Nexient? What did they do?
So they were pure engineering, outsourced engineering. So nothing but engineers. There was about 150, 200. Custom app dev. So mostly .NET.
So custom app development.
App
for those of
development,
you who don't
front
know.
end. Yeah, sorry. Custom application
okay. Yeah,
development,
yeah.
bespoke
Okay.
software development.
So I just want to take a quick step back. So for those who aren't familiar with just a consulting company, can you just share what that is, and then how that then leads into the custom app development?
Absolutely. So, when you look at the Fortune 500, the Wells Fargos, the Chases, the Walmarts, their business really isn't software development, right? Their business is whatever it is they're offering to the market is. But software and technology has now become part of everybody's business. And they just don't have the capacity, the people, nor can you really keep an organization skills. Oftentimes when newer technology comes out, there's a time lag between that skill set kind of making its way into the organization. And so services companies like where I've been in, starting from the big companies like Accenture, all the way to kind of the smaller companies like Provoke, we fill that gap. So we bring in expertise, we bring in bandwidth to help companies like this get their technology projects done.
Right. So a services company, like a consulting company, they're kind of equivalent, I guess.
That's correct.
So they come in and they're very agile. They're constantly moving with the market and keeping up the skills that are needed to be hired as consultants by these large firms. So
the good companies do, at least.
Yes.
Know, like everything, there's a spectrum. So at Nexient, the angle was they had a good outsourced kind of engineering capability. They have grown in scale, but they were, sort of hitting the need to inject something different to kind of get that next growth spurt.
Yeah.
And that's when I came in and kind of brought advisory and consulting capabilities. So when you're just an outsourced engineering firm, right, you kind of wait till the customer tells you what to build. And I wanted to help our clients define what it is that they should build. So that's a little bit of strategy. It's a little bit of planning. And then I also launched a digital agency within that firm so we can bring UX and creative to the table. And that, I think, combined with a whole bunch of other different things, spurred the next level of growth. And we had something crazy, like 20 quarters of straight growth. And then right when COVID was just hitting, we started conversations, and that got acquired. There was an acquisition to hire there. And that was life-changing.
So you came into Nexient kind of as the creative to help guide them, because there were a bunch of engineers
That's right.
doing their thing, and you brought direction.
That's correct. It sort of just expanded what engineering can do and made Nexient more capable than just having engineers. We could offer a full suite of different capabilities.
Right.
And growing up an engineer myself, right, like I could appreciate what we're really good at and what we're not good at. Like we really need that creative help. You don't want to use my UI designs. Like that would be disastrous. No one would ever use them. There would be poor adoption. And
Again, sorry to cut you off. UX is user experience.
User experience, correct.
And UI is user interface.
User interface.
So user experience is basically the design of how someone experiences some kind of technology. And then I just want to make sure that our users aren't, I know we're in the tech sphere, but our users, our listeners may not know these terms.
Let's make this an analogy. So engineers are the people who are going to pour the concrete, install the pipes, wire your electricity. Those are your engineers, and they all have different skill sets, just like when you're building software. UX is more like the people who lay out a house. Where should the rooms go? Where should the doors be? Where should the windows be? It creates the so-called flow, right? Or you can have an open concept, or is it not going to be open? That's the equivalent of UX when you're talking about software. And then UI design is more like the creatives, like the
interior design of the house.
Exactly, interior design. Yeah. What colors are you going to use? What's the curb appeal for the house going to be? So if you look at kind of building and construction as compared to software build and construction, it's very similar. We use different terms, but the same sort of skill sets and kind of bringing these cross-functional capabilities together.
Love it.
When brought right together, can really build really great software.
Okay, so then you're at Nexient. You got Nexient.
Nexient. Yes.
Nexient.
Yes.
Then you got acquired.
Yes.
Again, your second
we got
acquisition.
Acquired, so it was my second acquisition. That was life-changing money. I thought about moving to a lower cost state than California, which I love, but it is expensive here.
It is, yeah.
But I just didn't feel like I was ready. And an opportunity for the CEO role came out at Provoke. So I went in, and March will be my 5th year here. And the dream is to, again, build something so valuable in the market space that, we make an impact, and whatever happens, happens.
So tell us about Provoke.
Yeah. So Provoke is a technology consulting firm, right? So we focus on doing application software development, custom applications. And, there's 10,000 services firms out there like us of our size. There's ones that are bigger as well. And so we've really focused on how do we disrupt the entire process of making software development. I mean, I find it funny that they call it the SDLC, the so-called software development lifecycle, because oftentimes it can feel like it takes a lifetime to develop good software. And so what we've been focused on is how do we compress the timeframes of that without sacrificing quality? How do we solve the problems that have plagued software development ever since even I was a kid, using the latest and greatest technologies? And Gen AI just happened to be the answer to a lot of those problems.
As a consultant or, services engineer, designer, you've moved through so many different waves of technology over the course of your career.
Yeah.
Right. And something that's very specific and unique to services companies, as we said, is they have to stay really agile and on top of what's needed and what's new, so companies can then just hire out rather than having their giant conglomerate have to stay agile with the changing markets. This is kind of what the services companies do instead. And so what trends have you seen having to stay with your finger on the pulse of what's changing? And how does that relate to the world of AI and how AI is changing?
Yeah.
How do they compare?
I feel blessed to have seen some of the major disruptive waves come through the enterprise as far as technology is concerned. So when I first joined the workforce, the big thing was digitization and just getting onto the internet, right? Really helping businesses go from brick and mortar to having a digital presence where now you can connect with buyers on their time frame, 24/7. There's not this concept of whether a store was open or closed. And so I got to be a part of that. I got to be a part of the first internet boom, where you really saw disruption, like in the insurance industry, where very traditional ways of doing business could not compete with the rising stars that were doing business on the internet, doing things like issuing insurance policies and processing everything from claims.
Yeah.
to origination. And so that kind of carried through a little bit when there was still client server architecture, so still a lot of on-prem and data center stuff. And then the internet, the cloud wave came out, and this is the one that most people kind of relate to what we're seeing today with AI and Gen AI. But the unique thing about the cloud is it changed the computing paradigm. So what a cloud did was it enabled organizations to not worry about, are my servers nearing capacity? When do I buy? And it's always kind of tricky because if you bought too early, then you're probably paying a premium for the hardware. If you bought too late, you would ruin the user experience.
I'm just going to quickly pause. So I actually get asked this question a lot. People ask me, what is the cloud? And so I'm just going to
Yeah,
quickly kind of interject, and you can also
please.
share. But the cloud is basically when you have your data stored somewhere else. So people used to have to put all of their own data and processes on their own machines. So they would have to buy these servers and do all these operations and store all their data locally on their own machines. But then with the cloud, they were able to store it locally. So, if you have Apple iCloud, you can store your photos on Apple's machines. And if you get rid of your phone, you can just, again, download them onto your new phone and onto your next computer. They're stored somewhere else. And so that's what it is. And companies don't own, as another additional point, companies don't own the machines that are being used. So you could have it stored somewhere else and then download it, but you own the machine. For example, you could have like a virtual machine that you own where you can download it. You get rid of your phone, you download it. But the specific thing with the cloud is that you don't own the machine, that it's owned by Apple or it's owned by Amazon, and you're trusting them to keep your data kind of secure, right? So let's return. So as the rise of this
Yeah,
phenomenon and this service
yeah.
became popular, you started to see.
Yeah, so we started seeing enterprise trying to figure out how to adopt it, right?
Yeah.
And to your point, I'll use another analogy because I remember this vividly when the cloud came out, and everybody was kind of having similar arguments that you're going to hear about today around AI. Like, do we need our own private cloud? Is it hybrid? Do we even really need the cloud? Is public cloud safe?
Hmm.
Right? And the analogy that was often used was, well, is storing $100,000 under your mattress in your own room that you own safer than giving it to a bank?
Hmm.
Right? And that's kind of the paradigm that I think is the foundation for cloud. Like, obviously, you put money in a bank because the bank has safeguards and vaults and all those things to really make sure that it's actually safer there than in your house that could burn down. Someone can more easily break into it
Hmm.
and take your money. It's the same thing with your data and your computing capabilities being stored in the cloud. And so enterprise had like a 3 to 5 year period trying to figure out what version of cloud was going to come out. And then the one that came out obviously was public cloud, right? The one that we
Hmm.
all know and love,
Which is when
which
you don't own the machines,
you
right?
don't
And
own
the
the
private
machines.
cloud is when you do own the machine, but it's stored remotely, kind of what I was saying before.
That's correct.
Hmm.
That's correct. So then, cloud kind of stayed the dominant technology picture. And then you had some process changes come in. So you had like agile, right? So like people started saying, hey, we need to do agile. And
Hmm.
this was an attempt to say like software shouldn't take this long. So agile was supposed to compress those timeframes. As we've seen it, doesn't really compress it, but it starts delivering value sooner and incrementally. So you're not waiting for the so-called big bang where every 18 months you get a big release. Like every month, you'll see some new features and functionalities and bug fixes come out. For those of you that are familiar with like Facebook and Instagram, they have an update every 2 weeks.
Right.
And you get some new capabilities, you get some bug fixes. So there's that agile movement. Then there was product mindset, which is like, oh, well, solutions should be built like they're a product.
Uh-huh.
And so that's kind of taken some traction. And then we have AI, which is kind of the current trend and the current wave that we're all trying to absorb and figure out. And I love this one in particular because I think this one is not like people like to compare it to the cloud, but really I think it's more like when the internet came out.
Mm.
It presents a brand new paradigm, not just an improvement on the paradigm.
Correct.
What I also love is AI has been a concept since I was a kid, and that was way too long ago, so we won't mention that. But it's really never gotten kind of the mainstream attention at enterprise. But
Right.
you look at it in the last 2 years, it is the only thing that people are talking about. You look at the venture community, it is it's probably the most dominant thing that they're examining and talking about and thinking about writing checks. And,
Right.
I love what's happening with LLMs and all the companies that are involved in that because it's truly democratized AI. It's made it something that everybody can look at and figure out how do I apply this to a problem and get to a solution relatively quickly.
Right. And so how would you compare then? I know you've mentioned that you saw fears over
Mhm.
time as some of these technological waves have come through. How would you compare the fears that you see now to the fears
Yeah.
back then?
I think it's very, very similar, and a lot of it is legitimate. So, for example, if you were to pass all your code to just open ChatGPT, ChatGPT would keep all of that information. It would keep a history of it, its learnings, etc. And
Yeah.
if someone were to talk to ChatGPT and prompt it the right way, you could probably get a lot of that information that you want. Um, so you have
It
to have,
depends. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, we won't go into that, but yeah.
yeah, and some of it is perception
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
reality. And
Yeah.
you hear anecdotes like Samsung was the more famous one where like they accidentally let a document into ChatGPT and it's like, oh no, the world's going to end. And it didn't. Like they're
Yeah.
fine,
Right.
right?
It depends on whether they train on that, on the new data that they get. And
That's right.
yeah.
That's
Right.
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 So there's still certainly a lot of fear over data privacy. There's still a lot of fear over IP leakage.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you're seeing a lot of primarily security and data privacy concerns
Yeah.
come in. And I also think there's also this trust factor. Like, can we trust AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, dominant story that people think about is, oh, it can't even count the number of R's in strawberry correctly. So how can you trust anything else?
Yeah.
I have a relative who's also in the industry, and he's like, "Oh, if you go into ChatGPT, it'll tell you have to tip the Disneyland attendants when you go through the carousel." Like those are the exceptions, right?
Mm.
So I think there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of just fear mongering going on. But if you really go deeper and you look at how much value people are already getting out of the technology, the time that they've realized value compared to some of the other technologies trends that have come out
Right.
is so much faster. It
Right.
used to take a couple of years, 3 years before you started to see real value come out, for example, from a cloud adoption. Whereas with LLMs and generative AI, especially now with agents,
Yeah.
people are seeing
It's
value in
instant.
like instantaneously
Yeah.
and seeing asymmetrical returns in like 6 months or less.
Right. Right. And with the cloud, there was these similar fears, right? With storing your data
That's
on
right.
machines that are not yours, but that ended up being something that we didn't have to be worried about necessarily. Or I don't know.
It's
I
so
still
funny.
think
It's so funny you say that because I remember the whole cloud debate. I had a major banking client, and we were advising them that they should go on to cloud. And their thing was like, okay, tell us about the architecture. So we explained it like, well, what's happening on that machine in the cloud? And so we explained it to them, and they're like, wait a minute. So our customer data is going to be on the same hard drive as our competitors' hard drive, and that's not like it's funny to talk about now, but like nobody thinks or talks about that today.
right. I am still a little concerned about it in terms of once we get quantum computing
Mm,
going, I feel like all passwords will just be off and there will be chaos. But I don't know enough about quantum. I need to have someone on this podcast who knows more about quantum and who
yeah.
can talk to me. But I have heard that widely that once quantum breaks through, passwords will just be moot.
Yeah. Current encryption schemes, as I understand it, will not stand the
Yes,
brute force
exactly.
attacks from a
Exactly.
quantum computing machine. But
Right. Because it'll be able to break it in no
yeah,
time, whereas now it would take
brute forcing would
centuries.
take too long.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, so you have seen this shift,
Yep.
and how have you seen talking to your clients?
Yeah.
Because as you said, as we
Mhm.
know, you're a services company.
Yeah.
You talk with a lot of clients, potential clients. How are you seeing the adoption of AI with them? Are they excited about it?
Yeah.
What trends have you seen?
So I think there's three buckets of clients and prospects out there. So one is kind of the trailblazers, and they are very much into proof of concepts. They're very much getting their feet wet. They keep the people that they need to informed, and they think about and talk about how to make it safe so that if things go wrong, nothing catastrophic will happen. And I think those over the next, when I say long run, it used to be 5 to 10 years. When I say long run now, I say in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to
Yeah.
see them be the clear winners in
Mm,
whatever industry or category they're in. On the other side of the extremist people is like, I think you and I have talked about this, where they've banned all generative AI. You can't have ChatGPT. You can't
mhm.
use it. No co-pilots, nothing. So completely sterile of any generative AI sort of productivity gaining
Yeah,
tools.
right,
Right.
right.
And I think those are the ones that are really going to feel the pain and the pressure again in 2 to 3 years.
Why do you think they're doing that?
Because the reaction is risk management over upside. Like they don't want to take any risk. So it's completely a risk averse thing. And they can come up with 10,000 reasons why something's too risky. Right. And then there are ones in the middle. And the ones in the middle are, they kind of have like corporate wide policy, and then lines of businesses have the freedom to go and experiment a little bit on their own. So like some groups have like innovation, some companies have innovation groups. And those innovation groups are all in on trying to experiment with this stuff and figure out where the right application solutions are.
Yeah.
So I think they will actually have a pretty good spot because they kind of can see what the trailblazers are doing.
Yeah.
And they're going to build a lead against the people who are doing nothing. And so I think when I look and talk about enterprise, it's the same concerns, right? It's data privacy. It's how can we trust this thing? And frankly, there are some who are concerned about kingdom building, like, oh, this means headcount reduction, and that means I'm going to lose power. So I'm a little concerned about it, and I don't want to do it.
Right.
And so there's those sorts of politics that also come into play that they will eventually need to get over.
Absolutely. I mean, what do you see? What have you seen in the past with companies that haven't adopted some of these cutting edge technologies or methodologies?
Well, they're playing catch up now because they can't compete with their competitors who have used technology to generate a leapfrog in competitive advantage and keep up with things that trend differently.
Right.
The people who have adopted the technology can absorb those changes and meet what the market is looking much more quickly than the companies who didn't. And I think you were going to be in a similar spot, except in the past, like say cloud, right? There's a lot of laggards. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, we all think that cloud is like 100%. It's not. There are still enterprises where they store their stuff in data centers and are still running data centers. And they're coming on that journey now. And they have the advantage of being able to say, hey, this company did it this way. Let's follow their best practices, lessons learned. The issue with this stuff now with generative AI is once a company builds a lead, if you're starting cold, you're never going to catch up.
Right.
Because they've built that lead so fast, they're going to continue to build that lead. And when you finally got parity to them, they've moved on to the next thing. And that lead just gets bigger and bigger.
Like the companies that didn't adopt the internet, for example.
That's right.
I mean, they're probably gone.
Yeah. If you didn't have 24/7, if you didn't have kind of an e-commerce option, like you're going to struggle, right?
Yeah.
And the stalwarts who actually did, like Best Buy, I think is a great example.
Yeah.
Like everybody kind of said, oh, they're dead. Like Amazon's going to kill them. They had a really strong internet play. They expanded their service offering to kind of meet a niche that Amazon couldn't. And look at them. They're thriving right now. They're doing really, really well.
Which company did you say?
Best Buy.
Best Buy. Oh, they're doing really well.
Yeah.
I did not know
Yeah,
that.
it's
Good
kind
for
of
them.
one of those sleeper.
How did they do that?
So
because of their internet services offering?
They did
what
an
are they
internet
offering?
service offering, and what Amazon always struggled with was the service component, right? So I don't know how to mount my big TV, right?
Okay.
You have the capability to do that with a Best Buy. They had the Geek Squad thing, right? Like you said, like a lot of people just don't even, hey, my router doesn't work now. You go to Best Buy, you buy the router, and you get the service that comes in and helps to make sure it gets installed. All your devices are connected. Yeah. Like they've really figured out how they can play well in places that the giants aren't.
So they've leaned into that.
That's correct.
Into what remained. I mean, and they were probably able to do that just by looking at the data of what are people still coming to us for. They're not buying things from us anymore, but they're using our services.
That's correct.
The Geek Squad.
That's correct.
Yeah. So you were recently at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, a yearly event where everyone shows up, and it's basically just the newest technologies, consumer electronics. And so I'm sure this year was all about AI.
It was all about AI. And, when I looked around to see where the empty booths were, I was always wondering, right, why there was less foot traffic. They had the nice big booths, great location, and you go by and there's no AI story to it. They're not talking about AI.
Oh, so the CES is basically there's a giant rotunda of just booths of different companies setting up, trying to talk to people, meeting potential clients. And you were noticing that there were some booths that were beautiful, but no one was there.
That's right.
And what you noticed was that those booths were the ones that did not talk about AI.
Did not have an AI story. So, booths like ours, where, we really heavily focus that, not in your face, but really talked about the result you can deliver with AI.
Yeah.
We got pretty good traffic. And all of our other companies that were out there all had some angle on AI. Everything from robotics, like they were literally showing robotic arms that could sort things
Yeah.
using AI to
Yeah.
kind of identify and figure out what buckets you should put items
Okay.
to walking automatons, which is a little creepy, shaking
Yeah.
hands with them and having them
Yeah.
interact with you, all the way down to software, right? Like everybody's using AI to tackle different aspects of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
We're focusing on software development, but other people are focusing on manufacturing workflows and processes.
Yeah. Speaking of which, let's just talk about Provoke's AI offering.
Yeah.
So Provoke, again, services company. And I also want to talk about what AI means for a services company.
Mm.
So Provoke Consulting / services company. Now you have developed a new product called KNOVVA,
Yes.
which I'm an advisor for, and it's been such a joy, such a joy.
Thank you.
So let's talk about that really briefly. And
Yeah.
I also want to know, actually, before we get to it, what kinds of services was Provoke offering before? Because again, these services companies have to adapt over market
Yeah.
changes. So I know that KNOVVA is just one branch of Provoke. You
Yeah.
have a lot of services offerings, but what have been some of your main ones as the technology has been changing? And then let's lead into
Yeah.
KNOVVA.
So a lot of the problems we were solving were cloud modernization. So that's taking really old applications and modernizing them so that they can run into the cloud, right?
Okay. So helping people
Just
catch
get into
up
the cloud.
if they,
Exactly.
yeah, exactly.
We were also helping people build brand new custom application development. So if they have a new idea, they want to build a new application because you can't buy the software for whatever reason, we would build it for them and we would help them build it in the cloud.
Great.
And when we say build, it isn't just the engineers, it's also having the creatives and the user experience folks. We had the build team.
Cool.
We had a testing team to ensure that what we built actually works and is going to stand all sorts of, different standards and tests. And then we also had an offering to help our customers maintain that software, right? Needs change. There's always going to be requests for new features and functions. So we offer basically a full suite of software development capabilities for our customers.
Cool.
Okay. And the way we would solve that, the way we would service clients traditionally was pretty tied to like certain bucket of hours required a certain amount of people. So we would hire people to deliver solutions. So what we've been working on over the last 2 years is really getting down to a level of detail to say, what are the tasks that our people really enjoy doing and really take advantage of their creativity and being human? And what are the things that are kind of rote, mundane, repetitive, that really important, still need to get done? And we really honed in and focused on how do we take those tasks out of the hands of humans and put them into agentic AI, which is what KNOVVA is, right? We call them digital coworkers because agents hadn't come out when we first rolled this out, the concept at least. And we're really, really pleased with how that's transformed test automation. So we can take, what used to take 1,000 hours of work by a team of humans, and we can get that done in 100 hours. It's that much of a difference. But we're also expanding into other areas, not just quality assurance. So one of the things that's really important is when you're doing a web experience, whether it's on your mobile or on your laptop, there's something called accessibility. And what accessibility is it's to make sure that people who might not have the fine motor skills to, kind of click on really small widgets, or their eyesight might be impaired and they can't see, or the color contrast isn't good enough. And so now, they can't really use the website. And accessibility's goal is to make sure that people with these varying types of disabilities are still able to engage digitally. And so there's a standard, and it's called WCAG. And again, it used to be just a team of humans trying to ensure that from the design to the code that it complied. Well, we're building functionality into KNOVVA so that it can automatically detect where the problems are. And at the first, it's just going to create this list for a human to go fix. But our end goal is to actually just automatically fix it.
So the goal for KNOVVA is, as you said, a digital assistant. That is basically a digital coworker, or digital coworker.
That's right.
That's what you said. Digital coworker. And right now it's mainly focused on test generation, test creation and generation. So basically when you are a software engineer, you need to write these unit tests or these tests to make sure that your code compiles. And they are historically and widely known as being very tedious and not fun to write. No one likes to do them. I mean, I guess maybe there are some people out there who like to do them, but the vast majority of software engineers do not. And
That's
so
right.
it's really great that KNOVVA is kind of tackling this issue because it's so tedious. And
It
so you
is.
can offer more extensive coverage if, implemented correctly, and then also cover these. It's focusing on the test automation, creation of these tests based on the code that you write in an automated way, and then also now creating a list of ways to alter code to make it more accessible
That's correct.
to comply with these accessibility guidelines, um, and then ultimately should be able to make those code changes
That's
itself.
correct. That's correct. Our goal is to really allow every professional to focus on the things that challenge them intellectually, creatively, and free up their time to work on these problems that, you know, move the needle. Like that's the common
Right.
term.
Right.
Like just my first job at Anderson Consulting Accenture was doing testing, and we didn't even have test automation. It was literally I got this script. It was about this thick, and I'd sit there and I click and just verify the results.
They would give him a list of things to check. Like
That's right.
if you click the submit button, does it go to the next
That's
page?
correct.
You know?
That's correct.
Yeah, exactly.
And so while that was educational, it got old pretty fast.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
And
Yeah.
so like the meme out there is like, I think some lady had said, like, I don't want the bots to be writing poetry and making paintings
Right.
while I do the dishes and fold the laundry.
Right.
I want the bots to do that so that I can,
Exactly.
do all the creative things. And I think in software development, it's the same thing.
Absolutely. And so because we're working on at KNOVVA building an automated software developer in a
Yep.
sense, I mean, it is focused mainly on test development now.
Mhm.
What is your view on the idea that software development will be completely overtaken in the next few years? There will be no software developers, and you are a father
Mhm.
to two beautiful sons.
Yeah.
One of them is in college.
Correct.
And he's considering what to do, right? You told me, I think it was between data science and software engineering. He's interested in kind of STEM
Yep.
and in computers and software
Yep.
development. How are you advising him as
Yeah.
he's making this decision? And I get this question so often from my viewers, should I do software development?
Yeah.
And so as you are someone who has seen these changes over
Mhm.
time and seen how when these technologies have come in, I mean, I think AI is really different. It's obviously more closely tied to the internet than it is like cloud
Mhm.
in terms of the scale of impact that it's going to have and kind of the earth-shattering change that it's going to make. How do you advise your son based on what you know
Yeah.
and what you kind of foresee?
So it's tough, right? Because there's a lot of voices out there on social media and on LinkedIn that kind of talk about, the death of the software developer. But I really think it's premature and just flat out incorrect.
Mm.
I think that, as great as KNOVVA is, there's still a percentage of tasks that the agent is smart enough to raise its hand and flag and say, I don't know what to do with this. And it takes a good human developer to go in and kind of interpret sometimes what could be nuanced code, what could be code that's running in just too many different paths and contexts that you really need a human being to kind of go in and address the problem, right?
Mhm.
And so I think there's always going to be a role for software developers. When the cloud came in, people were again ringing the bell on, oh, system admins are, going to be out of work and you're going to see this huge hit to the IT industry. We all know that's not true. It's grown. People's skill sets have shifted.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's going to happen here. And I think what's actually going to happen is um, I call it the old world of AI. You needed to like kind of understand how the engine was put together. The new, more modern, more recent, I should say, form of AI that's being leveraged in the enterprise, kind of like driving a car. Like you and I drive cars. I have no idea how the engine works. I couldn't go over there and build my own engine, much less fix it or tweak it.
Me
But I
neither.
can still get use of it out of the car, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what the new generative AI models are, is it allows you to just drive the car and take it to the direct places that you want to. So for my son, like the first thing I would advise is do what you are interested in. And I would stay away from love and passion because I think for my own career, right, like things like that change.
Mm.
Your life experience will change your priorities and your
Mm.
passions. But like right now, it's all about what are you most curious about? What are
So
you most
curiosity over love and passion.
That's correct. And then you go and try it because like college isn't the only place you learn. I think we both know that, right? Like it
Yeah.
gives you a good foundation, but then once you go into the workforce, once you do your passion projects, you start finding other things that pique your curiosity, and that may shift where
Mm-hmm.
your quote love and passion goes. So I would say stay true to that, and that's what
That's
I've
good
actually
advice.
told
Yeah.
my son. And then as far as like getting into real, I just think the skill sets are going to change. It used to be you could really focus for your first 5 years of your career, at least in a consulting firm, but I suspect in a wider uh, range of professional environments as well. To really focus on being an individual contributor, building your skills, right? If you're a coder, you're a coder. If you're a business analyst, you do kind of requirements. If you're creative, you're doing all the creative and user experience work. I think what generative AI and the new workforce is going to be is younger people need to learn leadership. They need to learn management. They need to learn how to be a team player.
Mm-hmm.
They need to learn how to work not just with human coworkers, but with digital coworkers. And so your first 5 years are going to look different than, say, my first 5 years when I was getting started in the business. And that's the big shift that needs to, that will happen. And so start developing, the so-called emotional intelligence, right?
Right.
Not so
Mm-hmm.
much because digital coworkers have emotional needs. It's more the other humans that you're interacting with. That's where you're going to add value.
Right. Although it has been shown that if you are kind to these digital
Oh, really?
coworkers, yeah, the way you interact with them actually affects their output in a positive. If you interact with them positively, it affects their
How
output in a positive way. So if
interesting.
you say like, please do this for me, it's been shown that they actually behave better. And it kind of makes sense, right?
It
If you're looking
does.
at the training data, like mathematically, it would make sense that it, people respond better in the data. People respond better when they're treated
Yeah,
nicely. So that would then be reflected in the model itself, right? So yeah, maybe you
that's
need these
pretty.
emotional skills as
I
well to
think it
interact with
does.
bots. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think like what's going to happen is the technology is going to start being very clear about the advantages from a productivity standpoint. But things like mentoring and coaching, soft skills, we talked about emotional intelligence, um, teamwork. That's going to be so important, so much more important going forward because all of the tech work now can be done by digital coworkers. So the value add is going to be in what happens when a team of humans get together and put their mind towards solving more nuanced, more difficult problems.
Hmm.
And so your ability to contribute to that earlier is going to really make you more valuable in the workforce.
Right.
So my opinion is like, if I'm advising my son is like, yes, I very similar to me, like really all about the tech and being the best engineer. But it took me 10 years or so to kind of finally pick up, oh, there's all these other soft skills I need to pick up. I'm advising him like, start putting yourself into situations to do that now, right? Like
Hmm.
be a leader, and leader isn't a title, right? Like no one ever taught me this stuff. So like I always thought, oh, leadership comes with title. We all know that's not true. It's how do you demonstrate leadership on a day-to-day basis with your 1 to 2 peers, and how does that grow? So I think being more human
Hmm.
is going to be more the emphasis in the future workforce.
Yeah. I mean, coming in as CEO, this is your
Hmm.
first time in
Yes.
a role like that.
Hmm.
I don't know if you had leadership roles per se before. You were
Yeah, I
definitely
did.
helping. Okay. I know you kind of had the vision
Yeah.
and you were helping with that, but I didn't know if you were manager
Yeah.
or whatnot. How have you seen the difference between a leadership role versus individual contributor, where you're like a coder and you're
Yeah.
just working on your own thing?
Yeah.
And what skills are needed to be an effective leader? Because again, as AI becomes more prevalent, these
Hmm.
soft skills are more valued, right?
Absolutely.
So, what
Yeah.
advice do you have then for someone who wants to learn how to
Yeah.
be a good leader?
So to me, it starts with personal leadership. Um, and personal leadership is like a lot of things in life, but leadership in particular, it's a demonstration sport. So if you're not as disciplined as you need to be, if you're not meeting your own commitments, if you're not holding yourself to a high standard, you're not adopting the growth mindset where you're just looking for that 1% improvement every day, every week, pick a time
Hmm.
scale. It's going to be really hard for you, the rest of the world to view you as a leader. So start there.
With your own personal development.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like personal development is really
Commitment
important. You got
to
to
that
commit every
every
day.
day getting better.
No excuses.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
you know, personal leadership to me is like signing a contract with yourself And, you know, we respect contracts we have with third parties, but often the contracts with ourselves are the first ones that we're willing to break. Don't be that
Ah,
person.
don't be that person who breaks their
That's
contracts with
right.
themselves.
That's right. Um, then after that, because like leadership kind of happens naturally. It's not something where you go, I'm a leader,
Mm.
and you know everybody comes to you and goes, oh great, you're a leader. It's if you do the personal leadership right, you know, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, right? You're the average of the 5 people
Mm-hmm.
that you, be one of the 5 people that people want to be around,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Not one of the 5 people that they're trying to cut because you're not helping them grow. And so if you're in a circle of people where they naturally are growing along with you, that's how you kind of become a leader. It's not demanding it. It's not being an authoritarian about it. It's not being the decision maker. It's helping to lift those around you. And
Mm.
organically, you know, you do that over a sustained period of time, people will say, that's a leader.
So by just being better in yourself,
Mhm.
you naturally lift those around you, you're saying.
That's right.
Yeah.
At least in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? Now, once you've kind of established that and you've got your own personal game down, right? And you've got kind of the organic stuff down, then I think this is a really important aspect. And I think it's kind of a lost art. And what I'm about to say is probably really unpopular with your audiences.
Mm.
Um, you really need to, we really need to remember that as professionals, our job isn't just to do our jobs and lead our teams and that's it and drive business results. That's really important. But there's an aspect of we're only going to be in the business for X number of years. Are we leaving the world in a better place? Are we developing the future talent? Are we developing that 20-year-old who's just fresh out of school? And you know that the first 5 years of whatever impression you give them, whatever principles you teach them, they're going to stick.
Mm-hmm.
We need to take on that responsibility a lot more as leaders. And I'm speaking to my peers out there as CEOs is you have to put people development on your job
List of
description.
priorities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it's there formally or not, doesn't matter. Like that needs to be something you're thinking about every day. Like who are the people that can value your coaching at this point? Because not everybody needs coaching from a CEO right away, right? Some people will take value out of getting coached by a VP, out of a director, out of a manager. It just depends, right? But there's people all around us who really, they need that CEO level coaching to get to their next level. And so I've always felt like over the last 5 years since COVID and this movement towards people working remotely is the voices that are coming out are the people that are kind of in that senior mid-level management and talking about their personal productivity. And like, that's great. And I don't dispute that. But I think what we're seeing is soft skills, emotional intelligence, the ability to work together in a team, negotiation, leadership, presence, right? People talk about presence all the time. How do you develop that over Zoom? I haven't cracked that nut. If someone does, no, please let Harper know. I'm sure Harper will pass it on. I haven't cracked that nut. And like, I think it's really important as we move forward, especially with Gen AI adding more pressure on the question of what does it mean to be human and where is our value add? We got to get back together more in person.
No, it's so funny actually. When I was at Meta, I was on a team and we had a company offsite. We were working remotely mainly.
Mhm.
And then one day we decided to have a remote virtual offsite and we decided to use our VR headsets.
Mhm.
And we were just these blobs. Like we were playing a game where we were all these like crazy stick blobs and like doing some kind of hide and seek thing together. And I remember seeing my coworkers as these stick blobs and feeling more close with them than I ever had.
How funny.
Because I was like, because it was presence, right? So
Yes.
in VR, they talk a lot about presence, but your brain like doesn't know the difference between, ultimately doesn't know the difference between a VR headset presence and real life presence. But literally being with my coworkers as these blobs felt more connected to me ever than our video chats for years every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, so like we talk a lot about being in 3D at Provoke, and for services companies. So, you know, take this for what it's worth for competitors and as well as people on my team hearing this. We're a people business, right? So yes, we bring skills and capabilities, knowledge, advice, etc. But fundamentally, we are a people business. It's as true as a statement as it will ever be when people make that claim, because Our clients are, yes, buying from a brand, buying from a company name, but they're mostly buying the people that show up, the
At
people that they interact
Provoke.
with at Provoke.
Yeah.
And so we owe it to our clients, we owe it to our businesses to like really make sure that we get back to some level of in-person client interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's where the understandings, that's where the aha moments come. That's
Mm-hmm.
where the appreciation for what we're doing for them and us appreciating them as our customers come in. And I just think there's been a great degradation in these things that I think that are really important in business relationships.
Yeah.
And I really hope that generative AI becomes the vehicle that says, we probably need to get together to talk about what are we going to do that's going to make a difference. Because all of the stuff that we used to hide behind, oh, we need to do all these tasks. Well,
Yes.
Gen AI is
Exactly.
going to do that now. So we should be getting together to figure out, so what's the next big thing we really want to go tackle?
And so AI can therefore make us more human, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And I feel like this is kind of what you've been getting at, which is that because we can free up these tasks that we, as you said, we've been hiding behind, now we can all come together and create and build.
That's
And I
right.
don't, as I've said many times, I don't see it AI taking our jobs. I think it will allow us to move more swiftly towards where we're trying to go, to make really data-driven decisions at every step of the way and
Yep.
move exactly in the direction of where we're trying to go, rather than have to try out all these things constantly and then go in the wrong direction and pivot, pivot, pivot.
Yeah.
We can go straight where we're going via data-driven decisions, and also spend more time as a human together with our coworkers and create. And something I like to point out is Jevons paradox. Do you know about this?
I do not.
So it's basically, it was shown during the time of steam engine, when steam engines needed to use less coal
Mm.
because in advancements in the technology of steam engines reduced the need for coal. What do you think happened to coal?
Demand went up.
Yes,
Mm.
the demand went up. Why is that? Well, suddenly using a steam engine became more profitable for more people. You
Ah.
needed, you didn't need to make as much money off of after using the steam engine to still be profitable. So more people started using steam engines, and then therefore they were able to, distribute their businesses and grow their businesses in a way they never could have before. And so more people started using steam engines. And so this kind of goes into the coding thing. I know some people say that there will be no coders anymore in a few years. Actually, the CEO of Anthropic just said that, and he is apparently a bit more measured in his speaking. So that has me thinking like maybe there's something there. But Jevons paradox would say that as code becomes more easy to write, actually, we will increase demand for those who can at least read code and at least kind of oversee it, because more people will be writing code. More companies will have their own businesses. More people,
I
there's
agree.
less of a barrier to entry to have software, to have websites, to
I
get your brand
agree.
online. And so it'll actually blow up software engineering in my sense. But
I totally agree. I have one slight little
yes.
angle to add to that is
Mm.
I think the being human part is also, when you look at a team of, say, software engineers, because that's just the space I'm most familiar with, you've got the people who are already wired, that are craving to solve the real problems and work on the hard problems and be innovative. But then you have a segment who's kind of comfortable just doing all of these things that now Gen AI is taking away.
Mm-hmm.
Those people are going to be at a crossroads, right? If they don't sort of move their mindset towards, okay, I got to move on and, really elevate myself and my thinking and what my contribution to the company and the world is going to be, yeah, they will probably lose their jobs. If they move on to kind of become more senior, more human, because like I think human beings were meant to innovate.
Mm-hmm.
Like
We're
we're
constantly growing.
we're constant. We're creatives. Like
Mm-hmm.
even when there isn't a problem, we're looking for a problem to go crack. Because if we don't have problems, like I think humans don't do well with that.
Yeah.
But then, if you decide that you're not going to do that and you're no longer in the business, that was probably good for you too, because you were doing something to have something to do. And this forces you to really think about, well, what do you want to do? Right? Because
Yes.
maybe this isn't your
Yes.
spot. Maybe you should be looking at something else that's more interesting. It could be you want to get more into the research of quantum computing and doing early prototypes of that. It could be I want to go into a completely different field. Like the number of CEOs in my business that ended up running restaurants or
Yeah.
getting into different industries, like growing agave, for
Yes.
example, to make
Wow.
tequila.
Uh-huh.
Like maybe that is actually your
Yes.
calling at this point in time. So like I still think the theme of generative AI and modern day AI being the impetus to make us more human really holds true.
Gosh, I love that. That's my view with AI too, which is yes, some jobs will be taken.
Yep.
We don't have people who like typewrite out meetings
That's
anymore,
right.
like listen to
Yeah,
transcribe
yeah.
meetings. But there will be new jobs for those people to
Yeah.
take. And my hope is that I think so many people just work to live at this point. They're not doing what they
Yeah.
love. So few people actually get to do what they love. It's such a privilege.
It
And so my
is.
hope is that AI will help people be able to do what they love more, because these tedious tasks that people are doing just to get by can be automated, and it will open up the possibility for people to really focus on what they really love. And so that's my goal, is I really believe AI is going to cause this utopia if we can really implement
I
it well
agree.
and embrace it. So I just love your view on
I agree.
AI making us more human.
That's right. And we shouldn't fear it. Like that's probably the biggest takeaway
Yeah.
is AI is a tool. It's a super tool, but it's a tool. It's a little bit like a hammer versus a jackhammer. Without a human operator, you don't want that jackhammer just kind of taking off on its own, right?
Totally.
So you still need skilled humans figuring out strategically where to use that versus the little hammer.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so where do you see Provoke, where are you kind of
Hmm.
leading Provoke now,
Yeah.
given where you see the world going? I mean, no
Yeah.
one can say what's happening. Like no one can predict how the world is going to look
Yeah.
in a few years.
So what we're doing is, again, for the last 30 years, when you hire a services company, you have kind of boutique, high skill, non-commoditized skill sets. And that tended to be sort of domestic. Like you would find that if you were servicing clients in the US, you would find talent in the US to do that. The more commoditized skills, because they're cheaper labor
Mhm.
sources internationally, would go overseas.
Mhm.
What Provoke is trying to do is like the overseas companies have had a monopoly on those tedious,
Mhm.
commoditized tasks um, because no one could touch their cost structure.
Right. I mean, why would you pay more for the
Right.
same thing?
KNOVVA and Gen AI is really going to disrupt that. And so the future services companies, when a client hires Provoke, is not just going to be the typical your project manager, your technical lead, your developers, your QA, your UX team. It's going to be a mix of humans and digital coworkers. And I think as the technology matures, that ratio is going to start going more and more towards
Mhm.
digital coworkers. And the
Mhm.
humans that stay on are much more senior, much more thought leaders, much more problem solvers, managing the digital coworkers.
Yeah.
So for Provoke, like we think that the old model of trying to innovate in the software front, costing a lot of money, taking a lot of time, Nova is going to actually help change the equation on that.
And just quickly, QA is quality
Quality assurance.
assurance.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So that's what we were saying. It's like a list of things you need to check. So
That's right.
make sure the submit button actually submits the data, things like that. Checking a web page works as expected, because when you code it, you put it together,
Yeah.
but actually the functionality in the underlying code has to work. So that's QA. Yeah. So you see then Provoke and other services companies, with the rise of Gen AI, will need fewer people on each job, because
right.
you can have, as you were saying, like a 50-50
Yep.
human overseer
Mhm.
with these Gen AI
Mm-hmm.
digital workers.
Yep. And that ratio might even start tilting more
Even
heavily
more.
in digital coworkers because these LLMs are just going to get better and better.
And then what that will do for me, rather than seeing that as, oh no, we need less people, there are also the demand for these kinds of services will go up. More companies will be able to, because it'll be less expensive, because you'll need fewer people per job, like fewer humans per
Mhm.
job. More people will be able to afford these services.
That's right.
And more people will be able to build out their businesses
That's right.
and expand.
That's right.
And so, basic economics shows that as price decreases, demand increases, which is really just also Jevons paradox.
Yes.
And so my view then is that AI is not just going to like wipe out jobs. It will actually just increase the demand
Yeah.
for those services that people are providing when there are fewer humans
Yeah.
to make the cost so high.
I totally agree with you. I think historically, the only time I remember when something disruptive came in and causing job loss was whaling. Whaling got affected when Edison turned on electric lights.
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't need to go hunt whales,
Mm-hmm.
extract the fuel to create lighting anymore. But everything else, historically, it's shifted people's jobs. It's changed their skill sets. It's changed the expectation of people's capabilities, but he didn't get rid of them. Like I said, IT
Right.
has only grown since cloud came out.
Right.
Brick and mortar didn't die
Mm-hmm.
because the internet came out. In fact, now you probably see some crossover, right? Like I think it's, please apologize. I apologize
okay.
for Athleta, something like that.
Yeah.
They started as a digital company.
Oh, really? I didn't know. Brick and mortar is when they're actual like physical sites for shops as opposed to just being online.
Yes, like going to the mall.
Right, exactly.
Which, you know, for the younger generation is starting to come back.
Amazon has wiped out a lot of brick and mortar. Basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you're seeing still really good brands survive and in fact expanding into brick and mortar.
Yes.
So I think, you know, to our conversation so far, AI really is an enabler and not something to be feared. We don't know for certain, but the way I see it, and my experience is, this is a great impetus for us to really get back to doing the really cool things and solving real problems and putting our brain power on stuff that matters.
Totally. And also just another thing on the economics note is people might ask, you know, well, how do you know then that they'll actually provide more services and they won't just keep the larger, you know, margin? They won't just keep their prices the same and have a larger margin. Well, economics doesn't work like that. Economics means that if there's competition, other people will reduce their prices because they'll want to win the client, which then forces those people to not be able to just keep that margin. They'll have to also reduce their prices or else they won't be competitive anymore. And so economics helps with this issue a lot.
It does.
You know,
it also helps on the other side, which is to stay a leader, you have to keep innovating. You have to come up with new products and services. You have to meet the needs of,
to be competitive in the space.
Or to keep your lead.
Yeah.
And as those ideas come out, guess what? You still need teams to implement that.
Right.
And now you'll have teams of humans, but it's digital coworkers bringing those ideas to life much more quickly. And if it doesn't work, you move on to the next thing.
Exactly. It's so rapid. You
That's
could have
right.
the digital coworkers try out 8 different ideas.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
and we as people are the ones ideating and collaborating and creating and, you know, hanging out with our coworkers and going to happy hours, as you were saying.
That's right. I miss the days where happy hours weren't scheduled.
Yeah, he was saying to me outside of this interview. What were you saying?
So, you know, it used to be that, you know, you'd work on a project really late on a client site. You solved a really tough problem. So everybody has this sense of like, hey, we did it. And, you know, it's 9 p.m., 10 p.m. and let's go grab a beer, pizza. And that's where all the bonding happens. And a lot of the people I still talk to and work with were from those days when we were younger and doing that. Today, happy hours are like kind of scheduled. And, you know, everybody comes to the office on that day so we can explicitly go to happy hour at night.
But no one even really knows each other that well.
That's
so
right.
It's not that fun. You show up because you have to.
But you lose that spontaneity.
Exactly.
Right.
That too, yeah.
So much of I don't know if this is your experience, but like so many good ideas come out spontaneously.
Totally.
Right. And you write it on the back of a napkin so you don't forget it. And like, I really feel like Gen AI, I hope, digital coworkers, I hope, brings us a little back to that era. I don't think we're ever going to go back to 5 days a week in the office. I think that's a little foolish of like the big companies to expect, but certainly 3 days, 4 days, solid, where you're in the office working together as a team, where you're out at client sites if you're a services provider or a consulting firm. I think that's long overdue and there's demand for that.
Yeah, you know, I think so many people when they hear that, going back to the office, this is a visceral, like, ugh. And I was actually listening to a Human Lab episode on happiness, and she's talking about how we as humans actually don't have this brain drive to, his guest was saying, we don't have this drive to see other humans for some reason. Like we can really get insular and we don't have a natural drive to do that so often. But we'll notice we're unhappy and we're isolating and we're unhappy. And then as soon as we go out and see people, we're like, oh, actually, I feel better. Like I should do this more often. And then you go back into your little hole. And I think I think maybe people hearing this and hearing about the idea of going back to work and being with people, it's like, oh, I want to be in my little hole. I want to do whatever I want. But I think it actually will be really good for us as humans to spend more time with other humans, ideally doing what we love, which AI can hopefully open us up to being able to
100%.
do.
100%. So yeah, when I was 20, 25, like I always thought, oh, the older generation, they don't get it. And I'm trying really hard not to be that guy. But I really do feel like the next front of business innovation, great companies is going to be built on in-person collaboration. And now that we have, like I said, like these tools to kind of take the mundane and soul-sucking stuff off our plates, we can spend so much of our precious time doing those things.
Yeah. And doing what we love, and also helping ideally mitigate this loneliness epidemic.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a whole
can of worms.
It's a whole can of worms, whole other topic. I mean, I'm an introvert by nature, but I also know that I do need to be around people because we are social creatures, introverted or extroverted. We weren't wired to just give into a label called being introverted. That
right.
It's just varying degrees. Some people need a lot more of it. Some people need less of it, but we all need it to some degree.
So what message do you want to really get out to the listeners of this podcast?
Yeah.
And what closing message do you have? And then if you want to share kind of what you feel, if you have one, your purpose with Provoke and potentially in your life is.
Wow.
Perhaps as it relates to AI, it doesn't have to be like your whole life.
Yeah.
But if you have something for that, that'd be great too.
Yeah, it's a really big question, but I love it. So I think the takeaway for me is, at least in my life, technology advances have made life better. Businesses can meet the needs of their customers much more accurately, precisely, and timely. And I think this is the same exact thing. I think OpenAI came out with Operator. Think about all of the things that you can now do without having to carve out time to go, I need to make that reservation for my vacation or for my next business trip. You could use Operator.
Eventually.
To do that. Eventually, right. Yeah. But that's the vision, right? It'll come true, I think, sooner than we think.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the future. And so that's the big takeaway. I know there's a lot of people who are scared of it and there's concerns, and some of them are really legit. Some of them is FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But I have come to learn that you need to be positive and excited about this. I was a doubter of the cloud because it put a lot of my identity at question. But looking back, that was really foolish. So now I'm taking a new mindset genuinely because I've seen it. Like, it brings more good than concerns and bad, right? Everybody will talk about the cloud went out, and so look at all these businesses that went out. Okay, well, let's go back and look at the stats for pre-cloud because it wouldn't really compare. As far as Provoke's purpose, like I think what we want to do is we want to help customers get what they need much more quickly from the businesses that they're working with. And I think that the technology footprint that we have today is going to enable us to do that. And Provoke plays a part in helping to bring enterprises up to speed, right? Because when it comes to new stuff, like we have like a kind of a model, like let us do it so you can see it. Then it's let us do it where you're working side by side with us. Then it's you do most of it and we just have a supervisory role. And then eventually we disappear and we move on to the next thing and businesses can operate on their own. And I think that's the cycle that we're going to take them through. And then I'll end like what my personal thing is. I really believe in coaching and mentoring the next generation. Like I worry about in the next 20 years when I retire, do we improve our workforce? That's, really what I think. I'm looking at Gen AI and agents as how can we use that as an aid or a tool to help us in that?
Right. The hope is that you will bring people back together. It will bring people back together. So then the mentorship will happen naturally.
That's right.
As opposed to us being so siloed.
That's right. It's a little bit of a conflict from what I just said, but I'll say like I was really fascinated with Reid Hoffman's digital twin and he was sitting there
Mm,
talking to him. But like, imagine the scalability that you can get. Like, if that digital twin is an actual representation,
mhm.
then it can survive beyond your biological years. It can survive you from a time standpoint. You can literally be mentoring 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people
Yeah.
and be relatively close to be dealing with the real person.
Wow. So digital twin is
I'm sorry, I keep
broad
using
term.
these
That's
jargon
okay.
terms.
Is a digital representation of an asset or a process or a system. And you can have digital twins of factories where
Yep.
everything that is going on in the factory you can see in this
Yep.
digital representation. You could, if you have been in a Tesla, there's a digital twin of the Tesla on the screen as you're
Yes.
driving around. You see people walking around. But now it sounds like there's digital twins of people, like an
Yes.
actual digital human
Yeah.
twin. So interesting. Yeah.
It was interesting watching Reid Hoffman interview himself and then
I
sort
haven't
of
seen this.
judging how that digital twin of himself responded.
Yeah. What did he say?
He said it was really solid.
Really?
But when, as an observer, when you look at the behaviors and the mannerisms, like it looked just like Reid, it acted just like Reid.
What data did it use? How was it trained?
The books, a lot of the books and all of the interviews, video, transcripts,
Okay.
all of that.
So it trained on his video. They trained a video of him and then his voice, but then the actual text that the
Yeah,
digital representation would speak would be from all just these text transcripts or books
that's
or
right.
whatever.
That's right.
Wow, that's
That's
really
right.
interesting.
It was amazing. So I think about how that can transcend time. Um,
That would be interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
check that out.
yeah. And so like that's how I think we can pass on a lot of our lessons learned and
Mm,
wisdom to, the future generation. And they're going to take their own take on it, right? Like coaching and mentoring is not a prescription. It's information. It's guidance.
mhm.
And so if we can use this technology to further that, I think that would be really, really useful. Can you just imagine like getting to, if this technology existed and you could talk to a digital representation of Turing, right?
Yeah,
Or Jobs or anybody that
I
you really
know.
respect.
Everyone could at scale.
Yeah. Like how
It's amazing.
valuable
So,
would that be?
oh,
So anyways, that's
I love that.
my dream. That's the, the vision. And, whether Provoke plays a part in that or not, like that's kind of like my passion sort of project that I'm thinking about and trying to ideate on.
Yeah, one thing that struck me about you since the beginning, since I first met you, is your deep love and care for people.
Yeah.
Like you really see people, you really value people, you see what skills people have and bring to the table, and you want to help them flourish, and you really genuinely care
Yeah.
about people. And I've always just really
Thank you.
admired that about you. And as a result, so deeply enjoyed working with you and was so excited to work with you when we first
Yeah.
met. So it's just been a joy to continue to, work with you and see your love for people and for your product and your care for humanity.
I
Yeah,
really
so
appreciate that because everything that we're doing right now needs to have that as the end goal. Or we're kind of writing ourselves out of history, right? And I don't want to do that.
what do you mean by that?
So if the end goal is using technology to make your P&L look better,
What's
sorry,
piano?
profit and loss.
Oh, profit and loss.
So when
Okay.
you're looking at financials, like,
Yeah.
how much revenue did you get? What was your cost? And what's the bottom line? Did you end up with profit or not?
Gotcha.
And like this technology is very, very tempting. It's very, very alluring to completely reduce costs down to the bare bone minimum, drive revenue up to a point, and then have this beautiful profit line that you can showcase. But if that is the end game and you're not thinking about, but that top line needs to continue to grow,
Mm-hmm.
that's how we end up writing ourselves out of history because humans will not be used to think about what the next big idea is, the next big growth area should be. And all of that investment needs to come from humans. I don't think that's, a Gen AI or an agent task, like, because there's no training data on that. But I also just want to take the time to say thank you. Like you've really inspired our team. And you've really helped us really understand what the technology can and can't do, what's real, what's not real. And so that's really, really, really valuable in shaping KNOVVA. So thank you for, your advisory and everything that you've done for Provoke, KNOVVA, and myself.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please leave a comment, like, it helps us a lot, send to your friends, and please do subscribe because I hope to see you here soon and join our community. All right.